Our connections are not that great.
We are in a time of great uncertainty. What does that mean for paying off debt, saving, and all the things in between? We're going to explore that in today's video, particularly during times of uncertainty. How much should we stick with what we're currently doing? And how much should we question what we have been doing and change that up for what's in the future? And we're going to use the analogy of being on a ship and encountering a storm as an analogy today that I think will be really helpful for our discussion. Before we get there, we should probably introduce ourselves and say thank you for catching the replay of this video recorded live. As people are joining us live, I want to just take a minute to thank you for watching the recording. My name is Amanda Neely with Grandma's Wealth Wisdom.
And I'm Brandon with Grandma's Wealth Wisdom as well.
And we were having a little bit of technical difficulties before we started here with Brandon, making sure he could hear and everything. So hopefully you made it past the first couple seconds, or actually you did. So thanks for sticking with us, even with that little slip up at the beginning. So Brandon, do you want to tell us a story to kind of kick off this discussion about when a storm happens and what that means for our money?
Yeah. So we've experienced this in a really interesting way. And there's a whole debate about either paying off debt or stockpiling cash during times of uncertainty. There's a whole big debate. We're not going to go there. But I guess we are going to go there a little bit. So the idea is put all your money towards debt, high interest debt, credit card debt, and all that, any kind of debt.
Student debt, your mortgage. Yep. Yeah, I thought you were going to tell us the story though.
Well, I am. Get rid of it as quick as possible. Well, we are a little unconventional in that we wanted to get rid of our debt, but we also wanted to make sure we had a reserve set up. And so anyway, in our business, this was crazy. This was insane that this happened. So it was a beautiful day in Chicago, and we decided that we're going to go home early. There was some roof work being done at our coffee shop, right? So the roof is off. They're fixing it. We couldn't see them up there, but it's pretty much a lot of the layers were off for this roof. And so we go home and we go to the gym, right? We're working out, we're doing our runs. I think you were on one treadmill, I was on the other treadmill. And I get a call from my staff. And I was like, all right, I'm going to ignore it. I got 5 minutes left on this run. I'll call them after this run. Then we'll do it. Get another call and I'm like, all right, I'll deal with it in 2 minutes. I'm almost done with this run. Then Amanda gets a call right next to me. And it's the same person calling her and saying there's an emergency at the store. The store is being flooded. Now, mind you, we were in the gym and we had heard the sounds of rain. Right. We knew that it was raining.
I didn't. I had my earbuds in, right? It was sunny the whole way. Okay.
And I was like, wow,
I had no clue it was raining.
I was like, wow, that's really a big storm. So anyway, they call and say, you need to come over here quickly. The store is falling apart. And Amanda's hearing, we hear literally running water. And we're like, oh crap, we better get over there. So we run over to the store, and literally a huge flooded the store. This was a 20 to 30 minute downpour. The funny thing was roofers they planned because it wasn't planning to rain. There was no rain in the forecast, but then it came. Then on top of that, it was huge. It was a lot of rain. So we come in. We are checking things. We were actually closed for how long were we closed for, Amanda?
A week or two, I forget.
If not more, I'm pretty sure it could have been a little longer. But we had to clean up the water. We had to get insurance come out to make a claim, all that stuff. And even the principal of the school, Amanda's walking around in with her pants up high and with no shoes because it's wet. And he says to us, you need to wear a mask. This could be very deadly and dangerous because it could be mold, could be all kinds of stuff. And so we were like, yeah, it's no big deal. We're young, healthy people. We didn't know that Amanda was pregnant at the time either.
Yeah, like 2 weeks pregnant. We didn't find out till later.
Yeah. So anyway, this storm happened out of nowhere, just happened. Screwed everything up. The staff had to work. Well, they couldn't work actually because we had no business at the time, and a lot of goods were, spoiled. All kinds of things that happened because of it. So, yeah. Anyway, what does all this have to do with paying off debt or stockpiling cash during times of uncertainty? You might ask, because this is important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, what does it have to do with anything?
So there are a lot of fans of a certain financial guru who will remain nameless for right now that say throw all your money at your debt, get out of debt as quickly as you can. They say that over and over and over again. But because of COVID-19 and the coronavirus and the economic impacts and this whole situation that we're in, this time of uncertainty, they're saying, actually, for right now, it's time to push pause on your baby steps and instead just stockpile some cash because once the storm blows over, you can always use that cash to pay off your debt. And there's a couple things that I think they're getting right and a couple things that I'm like, but wait a minute. So the first one from Brandon's story that sticks out to me is that they didn't see the storm coming. The roofers didn't. We didn't. Our staff didn't. The people that owned the building didn't. It was a pop-up thunderstorm, lots of rain, they had the roof all off and they maybe had a 5 or 10 minute warning because they could see the clouds coming in and they were rushing to cover up the roof, but they didn't make it in time. And that's you never know when a storm is going to pop up. And so to have a good emergency fund, right, a good stockpile of cash can be really important no matter if you think a storm's brewing or if you can't see it yet. And then once the storm hits, you don't know how long it's going to last. Thank goodness that one storm that we encountered when the roof was off was only about 20, 30 minute downpour. It could have lasted for days, right? There are times, this was a July thing. There are times that if that would happen during the spring or during the fall, there are times when it rains days and days on end, or that
or
kind
even
of thing.
that was 20 minutes, 30 minutes. If it could have been an hour or 2 hours, like it was, it would have been even worse for us.
Right. And so think about economic storms. You don't know how long they're going to last either, or how bad they're going to get. Anybody that pretends to know what's going to happen with the future of the economy due to coronavirus, they're definitely pretending, right? We don't really know. And so what's the right amount for your emergency fund? Right? If you think back, the thing I'd invite you to do is think back to 2008, 2009, people that lost jobs during that time. And think of people we all know someone who lost a job or maybe was just coming out of college at that point. How long did it take them to find good employment that was paying them what they were making in 2006, 2007 before they lost their job, right? I know some people were still looking for work when COVID hit. They had never found the really good job that they had before they got laid off. And some people, maybe they were young and they now can't find something that offers benefits and stuff like that. Or maybe they were in their 60s and they were planning to work longer, but now they've been forced into retirement. That the storm for them has never ended from then. So how big should your emergency fund be? Right? Do you think those people would have been happy with a 2 or 3 month emergency fund or a $1,000 emergency fund? Or do you think they would have been better had they had a year or two, right? Or maybe even more set aside for them? But like, debt is real, right? Like, you can't just like say, well, I'm going to save for this time that may or may not come. And, I could or could not have an emergency. I don't know when you're being charged interest on a credit card. So maybe talk about the flip side of this, Brandon.
Yeah. So the flip is, okay, I want to get rid of this debt as quickly as possible because it's holding me back, right? It's holding me back from the things I want to accomplish, I want to do, right? And so we want to get rid of that drag on our financial independence as quickly as possible. So I believe that we got into consumer debt, or we went to college, right? And we're still trying to figure out how to pay that off. And so we want to be systematic about taking care of that. But then at the same time, and this is happening a lot in the FIRE movement and all of this, people are realizing $1,000 emergency fund isn't very much, especially maybe whenever it was said that we need $1,000 emergency fund. Maybe that was in the 80s whenever there was not $1,000 went a longer way, right? Now with inflation and with everything else, we might need a lot more. Or back in the 80s, when you had a layoff, you were more quickly to get a job again. Whereas, 2008, there was people that were unemployed for over a year or more, right? And so how big should that emergency fund be? It depends on what you feel is important for stability, but also thinking about, okay, we're trying to balance paying off debt and building that emergency fund. Or the other thing is, how could you do both, right? How could you build that retirement, or not retirement, but that emergency fund to be used when it reaches to a certain level, and you have that emergency fund as well, that you can use it to pay off a lot more debt. That's something I think a lot about.
Yeah. So I want to back up for a second. So when we're talking about saving, making a stockpile of cash, that could totally go beyond just your emergency fund, right? Because you want to be saving for short, medium, and long-term expenses, right? So even with Corona here, Christmas is, and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, they're all going to still come in December, right? Mm-hmm. Birthdays are still going to happen. You're still eventually going to need to replace the roof on your car or on your house. You're going to need a new car, maybe eventually. Things are still going to happen throughout your life, and you're going to need some more long-term savings to ensure you have stability. No matter if you want to retire early, retire later, get forced into retirement, whatever it looks like for you. So how do you balance that with paying off debt? And so there's kind of there's two really common ways that people pay off debt, and then one way of paying off debt that isn't common yet, but we think is going to become more and more common. And so the first one is your typical snowball method, where you take your debts, you rank them by lowest to highest balance, right? And you pay off any extra cash that you have, you put towards your lowest balance. And then when that one's paid off, you take that payment and snowball it into the next largest debt, and you keep going until you get to your largest debt and you pay that off. The snow avalanche method, you do the same thing with, having them roll into one another, but you pay off the highest interest first. And there's a lot of debate out there over which one is better than the other one. And then the one that hasn't gotten a lot of exposure yet is something that our friend Mark Willis coined. He has a trademark on this, the debt snow bank method. And this is where you set up a safe, secure savings. And actually, Brandon, could you pull up the infographic for this from Mark's website? Because that would be cool to share. So and while you're pulling it up, I'll explain it a little bit. This nice, secure place to save money, and you keep paying just the minimums on your debt. And then when the total of a debt or all of the debt, or you can do it a couple different ways. When the total owed is the same as what you've saved over here, you actually take it out and pay off your debt in a big lump sum like that. And then when you've used what we call grandma strategy, you're still going to get the growth on the money over here that you are saving up so that you could pay off that debt. And you're not going to lose what's called the opportunity cost on those funds. This is actually how we paid off our student loans. Rather than putting extra money towards our student loans every month, we put it into grandma strategy. And 2.5 years later, we were able to pay off all of our student debt and then instead pay ourselves back. And we could adjust the payment, which actually came in really handy then when that flood happened while the roof was off, and we could temporarily lower our payments, whereas the student loan company wouldn't care. They would still want us to send them the payment. So it gives you more of that freedom and control as well. Okay, thanks, Brandon. So can you scroll up to step 1? So pay your minimums. It's the Snow Bank Method from Not Your Average Financial Podcast. Step 2, your extra money goes into your snow bank, and this bank on yourself, that's what we call grandma strategy. Bank on yourself is a great trademark that we're part of the Bank on Yourself network. We're Bank on Yourself professionals, in other words. And then step 3, use your policy to pay off your debts. Your Bank on Yourself type whole life insurance policy is what your policy refers to, your snow bank. And then step 4, keep on growing, right? So you don't just pay off your debts and forget about it. You actually, you keep saving, you keep being responsible, and then you can pay yourself back and potentially start a second snow bank. But maybe if you don't have debt, that just gets to become some long-term savings there. And of course, we're not talking about a literal bank here, right? No one's opening a bank. We're using the kind of snow bank, piling up snow as a metaphor for what we do with our money. So thanks for pulling that up, Brandon. And thank you, Mark, for putting together that infographic that shares it a lot. Maybe, Brandon, could you put that link in the comments so that people can go check it out? Of course, it's tied to a whole podcast episode where Mark goes in more detail about the differences between these. We also have an episode on our podcast where he talked about it as well. Now, here's the thing. You'll notice that we didn't say which one of these is better, right? Can you?
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me now? My audio was removed.
I have you added there. Sorry about that. I think I just removed you from the screen here.
Don't remove me.
Go ahead and add your sound there, Amanda.
How do I add my sound? I don't know.
I don't hear you now. Uh-oh. Go ahead and go
audio.
back. Start talking again.
I'm talking.
Oh, we don't hear you.
Let's see.
Oh, she's coming back in.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, there we go.
Okay, good.
Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button there.
You I was saying something really important too. Okay, so so you'll notice that we didn't say one of these is better than the other, right? We said there are 3 ways to go about paying off your debt. Snowball, snow avalanche, snow bank. You could do an infinite variety of these things. You could take them and change them around a little bit. You could do all kinds of stuff. But what we would actually love to do for you is help you do all the math. We've got a template, a calculator that we created that will show you here's what the snowball method would look like for you, and how much interest you would save if you did it this way, and how quickly you'd be out of debt. Here's the snow avalanche method, how much interest you'd save, how quickly you'd be out of debt. And then here's the snow bank method. Here's how much interest you'd save. Here's how much you'd be out of debt. And here's how much you would have saved for your long-term future so that you can buy that house, retire one day, send your kids to college, whatever those long-term goals are for you. So we'd love to put together that calculator for you. I'm going to put the instructions of how to get that. You go to grandmaswealthwisdom.com/snow. And then we will put that together for you so that you can see which one of these methods works best for you and choose accordingly. Know okay, here's my plan for getting out of debt. Here's what it looks like. And here's how I can adjust it when a storm comes up. So I said at the top, actually, that we were going to do a boat analogy with a storm as one of the things we want to talk about today. Before we get to that, I said a lot there, Brandon. Any comments, additions to what I was sharing?
I think just going in and thinking about, storms happen, right? We don't know when they're going to happen. And our emergency fund shouldn't be a credit card ever. We don't want to just depend on that as the way to get out of it. So I think it's, again, thinking about getting out of credit card debt, but also at the same time starting to build a stable foundation. So that way you don't go backwards. I've heard from many people that they've yelled, I'm debt free. And then something happens. This is to everybody. This is this crisis has happened to everybody in the world, but a crisis does happen in your life, will happen again, and it will happen again. Things happen. This flood for us was a crisis that was unique to us. I don't know any other buildings in that area that had their roof off at the time that storm happened. Anyway, so with that thinking, the emergency fund, more than $1,000 is important to have.
Yeah. Okay. So finally, we get to this boat and storm analogy that I mentioned at the very beginning. And we've kind of meandered here and there like a boat might. So let's imagine that you are on a boat and you're in the middle of the ocean and a hurricane goes by. It would probably blow you off course, right? You might end up miles and miles away from where you were when that hurricane hit, right? All you do is figure out how you survive throughout that hurricane, and you do whatever you can to do that.
You might end up on an island talking to a volleyball or something. I don't know.
You could, yeah. But let's say your ship survives. You're on that ship. The storm is past, and you're trying to figure out what do you do now. Now, let's say you were headed due east before the storm hit. If you continue to head due east, you're going to end up somewhere different than where you were planning to go, right? And so you have to course correct. You've got to maybe go a little northeast or southeast in order to get to your destination, that you were originally planning to. But what if that destination was decimated by that same hurricane? Would you still go to that same destination, or would you look for a different port to pull into or a different place to go because it has a safer harbor there, right? It has a place that people will buy your goods that aren't just recovering from the hurricane. Or maybe you go to the place where the hurricane is so you can help rebuild. I don't know. But if we take you wouldn't just blindly just continue along the way that
Looks like we lost
going.
Your connection for a second there, Amanda.
Uh-oh. Well, I was losing you a little bit too. I think this is the problem, having both of us on the same internet. Should I repeat anything that I was saying?
Yeah, go ahead and step back just a second. Like
how far?
seconds. 5 seconds.
Oh, just you wouldn't just blindly go the way you were going, right? Before the hurricane start. You would course correct, you would reconsider your destination. Now, that could be true of your financial situation as well. We are in the midst of a storm right now with everyone's money is. Even really wealthy people are saying, what do I need to do to change? And the very poorest people are saying, what do I need to change right now? What can I do to make sure that I'm able to feed myself and my family and put a roof over our heads? They might be asking different things, but everyone's thinking about that. And so what you want to be thinking of is if your financial life just got blown the wrong direction, right? Like you were headed east and you were blown to the north, right? Or to the south. If you want to still go to the same place, financial freedom, financial independence, that kind of thing, you need to take a different path to get there than the path you were taking before, because you're in a different place. And so that's one thing to think about, is what changes do I need to make to my financial path that I'm on because of what's happened with the economy right now and with my personal economy as well, right? But also, is the thing that the things that I was planning to be there for me, are they going to be there, right? So really easy to picture this with the stock market. The stock market has now seen 3 major declines in 20 years, right? The dot-com crash, the Great Recession, and then whatever they're going to call this thing with COVID. We don't really know what's going to happen in the future, but the market is different than it was in the 80s and 90s. And that means we need to act differently. And so that would be my question, like, what are you going to do differently because of what we've been seeing in the last 2 decades? Even the 2008 and then this, 10 years apart or 12 years apart from each other. Are you going to keep doing the same thing and see the same thing that's happening to you now happen to you again in 5, 10, 15 years, however long it takes? Or what changes are you going to make? What new destination, what new financial tools are you going to use? And I was actually just talking to somebody today who told me that she lost $20,000 this year since January 1 in a brokerage account that she has. And she's mad about it. I would be mad too. It's not like she has like billions of dollars. She has, a net worth that's in the maybe 100, 200,000 range. So that's a pretty significant portion of her money that's just gone. And maybe it'll recover. Maybe something will turn around for her and those funds that are in that account. But I asked her, well, what do you want to do differently now? Like, what changes would you make? And we had a nice conversation about it. And I think that's exactly the questions that we want to be asking right now. We don't want to just push pause on our path and say, well, I'll just restart in a few months or, whatever. We want to take the time to reconsider our paths and say, is this still the path I should go on? And that's what Brandon and I love to do with people. It's what we talk about day in and day out. what is your path? Is this the path you want to continue on? If it's not, what are the other paths that you would go on? And look for those paths that really have withstood the test of time. They've been trodden down a long time, but can be uniquely carved to your situation as well, right? Like you want time tested, but you also want it to be applied to you and where you're at right now. So yeah, those are kind of the questions that we'd be asking in this moment, relating to debt, relating to stockpiling cash, and just related to your financial journey overall. Anything you'd add?
Well, and I want to go back to saying, like, pushing pause on your dreams or your retirement goals or whatever it is. We shouldn't want, I mean, yes, things happen, but pushing pause to get that, it could be 5 years, could be longer. Like, does that, we only have so much time in our lives, really. Like, we say time in the day, but that adds up into, eventually we're going to be 80, 90 years old. And the longer you push pause, the longer you don't reach those kind of things, goals. And so, again, some of those babies.
Oh, I think, Brandon, you're breaking up. Okay, I'm going to keep talking.
What?
Oh, you were breaking up.
Oh, yeah. Some of the baby steps are really important, like, being out of debt and all of that. And the reason we're in debt is because we're supposed to be consumers, not people in the first place. And what's going to bring about this economy growth is us going out and spending money that we don't have. So maybe we need to look at our budget, be aware, right? But also don't pause your dreams either. So.
Yeah. Spoken like a grandma there, Brandon. Consider what is a need versus a want, all those kind of things. But also, yeah, keep thinking about the bigger picture too, not just what you're going to spend today, but what do you need to be saving for? And what's that ultimate dream and goal that you're shooting for there? And how can you align your money with it overall? And that actually informs a lot of then what you do the day to day. And how much you rush out and spend or not, right?
Yeah. Well,
which, because I know, like for me, this, Brandon, I would never spend any money if it was up to me. And I need to say, actually, spending this money will help me reach my goals in this way. And sometimes that's what people need. Yeah. Sure, the average American has way too much credit card debt and needs to think about needs versus wants and all that kind of thing. But there's also plenty of people out there who are more like me, have some extra cash and are wondering, what do I do with it right now, right? Maybe they are debt-free, right? And they're thinking, should I spend this and help the economy? Should I save it and help myself? Should I have a balanced approach there? That's another good way to think about this question too.
Or a lot of people have put it all into their 401k and they said it was savings and it was investing.
Right.
And they lost a lot of that money that wasn't theirs anyway when they needed it for an emergency.
So Brandon's breaking up a lot here. I think we might need to wrap it up for the day. Since we can't hear him anymore. Thanks again for watching. I'll just remind you to please, sorry, Brandon, we totally lost you for like 30 seconds.
I don't know what you're saying there, but it's probably really good.
Okay, I think it might be him. We'll see how the recording comes out. Be sure you get, it's you, Brandon, not me. Be sure you get the grandmaswealthwisdom.com/snow, and we will look forward to talking to you, sharing that calculator with you, and helping you continue to grow toward a smart, stable financial future that is there for you and your loved ones. We'll talk to you soon.